Park Ji-ho opened his eyes slowly. His head hurt badly. The cold metal floor beneath him felt strange. He tried to remember what had happened, but his mind was foggy. The last thing he remembered was walking home from his evening training at the military base in Seoul. He sat up and looked around. The room was small and had metal walls. A blue light came from strips in the ceiling. This was not Earth. He knew that right away. The air smelled different, and he felt lighter, like gravity was weaker here. Subject 2157 is awake, a voice said through hidden speakers. The words were in English, but the voice didn't sound human. Ji-ho stood up carefully. His special forces training kicked in as he checked himself for injuries. He was still wearing his black training clothes, but his phone and wallet were gone. Years of military experience had taught him to stay calm in strange situations. A door slid open in the wall. Two tall figures walked in. They looked like a mix between lizards and humans, with scaly blue skin and yellow eyes. They wore some kind of armor that glowed at the edges. "Come with us, human," one of them said. "You have been chosen." Ji-ho didn't move. Chosen for what? The aliens laughed. Their laugh sounded like rocks falling down a hill. "The human wants to know why he's here," one said to the other. "They really are simple creatures." Ji-ho stayed quiet. He was learning about his enemies. The aliens were tall, about 8 feet. They moved smoothly, like trained fighters. Their armor looked advanced, but it had gaps at the joints. Useful information if he needed to fight. "You are now property of the galactic arena," the first alien said. "You will fight for our entertainment, though I doubt you'll last long. Humans are so fragile." Ji-ho almost smiled. These aliens had made a big mistake. They saw his human body and thought he was weak. They didn't know about his years of combat training. They didn't know he had fought in 3 wars. Most importantly, they didn't know about the human ability to become something more dangerous when pushed too far. The aliens led him through long hallways. Everything was made of metal and strange glowing materials. Other aliens stopped to look at him as they passed. Some laughed. Others made sounds of disapproval. Finally, they'd reached a large room. It looked like a mix between a hospital and a prison. There were beds along the walls and strange machines everywhere. Other creatures sat or lay on some of the beds. Some looked injured. A human woman in white clothes walked up to them. She looked Korean, like Ji-ho. "I'm Lee Hannah," she said in Korean. "I'm the medical officer for the new fighters." She turned to the alien guards. "I'll take him from here. He needs to be checked before processing." The aliens pushed Ji-ho forward and left. Hannah waited until they were gone before speaking again. "You're taking this very calmly," she said, leading him to an empty bed. "Panicking never helps," Ji-ho replied. He sat on the bed and watched her prepare some medical equipment. "How long have you been here?" 2 years. They took me from a hospital in Busan." She started scanning him with a strange device. "You're military, aren't you? I can tell by how you move." Ji-ho nodded. "Special Forces. 15 years. Hannah's face showed worry. "That might help you survive. But don't let them know your full abilities. The aliens here, they see humans as their lowest class of fighters. They put us in matches for entertainment, expecting us to lose badly." In the distance, they heard loud cheering and the sound of something heavy hitting the ground. "That's the arena," Hannah explained. "Our new champion, Krevnar, is fighting. He's killed 3 fighters this week." She looked at Ji-ho seriously. "Be careful here. Some fighters enjoy causing pain more than others." Ji-ho lay back on the bed as Hannah continued her tests. He could hear the crowd roaring in the distance. The aliens thought humans were weak. They thought he would be easy entertainment. They would learn their mistakes soon enough. 3 days passed in the medical wing. Ji-ho spent this time watching and learning. He saw how the arena worked. Fighters came in with terrible injuries. Some never came back. Hannah worked tirelessly to save everyone she could. On the fourth day, the guards came for Jaiho. "Time for your first fight, human," they said. They seemed excited, but not in a good way. They took him to a large room filled with weapons. The walls held everything from simple spears to devices Jaiho had never seen before. An older human man stood there, wearing expensive clothes. He had a cruel smile. "I am Director Kim Dae-sung," the man said in Korean. "Choose your weapon carefully. It might help you live longer." He laughed softly, "Though I doubt it." Jaiho looked at the weapons. Many were too heavy or too strange to use well. He chose a simple metal staff. It felt similar to the weapons he had trained with on Earth. Director Kim raised an eyebrow at his choice. "Interesting," Director Kim said. "Most humans try to take the biggest weapon they can find. Their last mistake." He pressed a button on his wrist device. A door opened in the wall. "Your opponent waits in the arena. Try to survive at least a few minutes. We have bets to settle." Jaiho walked through the door. He entered a massive arena. The walls rose hundreds of feet high, filled with seats. Thousands of aliens sat watching. The ground was covered in red sand. The air felt hot and dry. His opponent stood at the other end. It was twice Jaiho's size, with 4 arms and thick, gray skin that looked like armor. The creature held a massive sword in its upper hands and a shield in its lower ones. The crowd cheered as it roared. Today's entertainment. A voice boomed through the arena. "A human fighter faces Grok the Destroyer. Place your final bets." Jaiho heard laughter from the crowd. He saw money and other items changing hands. They were all betting against him. In one of the luxury boxes above, he saw Director Kim watching with that same cruel smile. The signal to begin came. Grok charged forward, swinging its huge sword. Jaiho didn't move until the last second. Then he dropped and rolled, letting the sword pass over him. The crowd gasped. Jaiho spun his staff, hitting the back of Grok's knee. The alien stumbled but didn't fall. It turned, surprised. No one had ever dodged its first attack before. "Stand still and die, human," Grok roared. It attacked again, all 4 arms moving in different patterns. But Jaiho was already moving. His years of training showed in every step. He didn't try to block the powerful attacks. Instead, he avoided them, making Grok work harder and harder to hit him. The alien began to breathe heavily. In the medical wing, Hannah watched on a screen. She held her breath as Jaiho fought. Other injured fighters gathered around to watch. They had never seen anyone fight like this before. After 5 minutes, Grok was getting tired and angry. Its attacks became wilder. Jaiho waited for his moment. When Grok swung too hard and lost balance, Jaiho struck. His staff hit perfectly at a joint in Grok's natural armor. The alien roared in pain and dropped its sword. The crowd went silent. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. Jaiho moved fast. He jumped, using his staff to vault over Grok's head. As he landed, he struck again at the same weak spot. Grok fell to its knees. Jaiho held the staff against the alien's throat. "Yield," Jaiho said quietly. Grok yielded. The arena was completely silent for a moment. Then chaos broke out as people realized they had lost their bets. In his luxury box, Director Kim stood up slowly, his smile gone. Later, in the medical wing, Hannah treated Jaiho's few minor injuries. "You've made things interesting," she said. "But be careful. They won't underestimate you anymore." Jaiho nodded. "Good," he said. "That's exactly what I want." Word spread quickly through the arena about the human fighter who defeated Grok. Director Kim saw an opportunity to make money. He scheduled more fights for Jaiho, each one against stronger opponents. One morning, as Jaiho prepared for his next match, a tall figure approached him in the training area. She looked mostly human but had silver skin that shimmered in the light. Her eyes were completely black. "I am Yoon Suji," she said in perfect Korean. Half human, half starborn. I have watched your fights. Your technique is impressive. Jaiho studied her carefully. Thank you, he said. I have seen you fight as well. You move like water. Suja smiled. Perhaps we could train together. I know things about our opponents that could help you, and your fighting style. It interests me. They began training that day. Suji showed Jiho how different alien species fought. She explained their weaknesses, their habits, their pride. In return, Jiho taught her about human military tactics and how to use an opponent's strength against them. Director Kim watched their training sessions from his office. He spoke into his communication device. The human grows stronger. Double the bets on his next fight. And find me a real challenge for him. That challenge came in the form of 3 fighters at once. They were from a warrior race called the Titans. Each stood 10 feet tall and had skin like metal. The crowd cheered when they entered the arena. They thought this would finally be the end of the surprising human fighter. Your luck ends today, little human, one of the Titans said. All 3 carried huge warhammers that could crush stone. Jaiho held his staff calmly. He remembered Suji's words about the Titans. They are strong but proud. They never expect defeat. Use that against them. The fight began. The Titans attacked together, their hammers creating shock waves in the red sand. But Jaiho was not there when the hammers landed. He moved between them, his staff striking at the small gaps in their natural armor. The first Titan fell when Jaiho hit a nerve cluster behind its knee. The second lost its hammer when Jaiho's staff struck its wrist at exactly the right point. The third became so angry at seeing its teammates fall that it lost focus completely. In the medical wing, Hannah watched with others. He's not just fighting, she said quietly. He's teaching us all something about what humans can do. The crowd watched in amazement as Jaiho defeated all 3 Titans. He didn't kill them. He didn't need to. Instead, he showed that all their strength meant nothing against skill and strategy. After the fight, Suji met Jaiho in the recovery area. You have changed things here, she said. The other fighters no longer laugh at humans. Now they watch. They worry. Jaiho nodded. He had seen the change in how others looked at him. Fear had replaced amusement, but he also saw something else, hope in the eyes of the weaker fighters who had been bullied and abused. Director Kim was not happy. Yes, he was making money from Jaiho's victories. But the human was becoming too popular, too powerful. Perhaps, he said to his advisors, it is time to show everyone what happens to fighters who rise too high. Call Krevnar. Tell him I have a task for him. That evening, as Jaiho rested, Hannah brought him news. Be careful, she whispered. I overheard Director Kim talking. They're planning something. Something bad. Jaiho closed his eyes. He had expected this. The arena masters never liked it when a fighter became too successful, especially a human fighter. Let them plan, he said quietly. They still don't understand what humans are capable of. The arena had never been so crowded. Today was a special event, a team battle. 4 fighters on each team would face each other. Jaiho stood with his teammates, Suji, and 2 alien fighters who had earned his respect over the past weeks. On the other side of the arena stood their opponents, led by Krevnar. He was enormous, with black scales and red eyes. His reputation for cruelty was well known. No one had survived a fight with him in the past year. Director Kim's voice boomed through the speakers. Today's special event will show us what true power means. Let the battle begin. The fight started intensely. Jaiho and Suji worked together perfectly, protecting each other's backs. Their teamwork surprised everyone. No one had expected a human and a hybrid to fight so well together. In the medical station at the edge of the arena, Hannah watched nervously. She had her medical supplies ready. Something felt wrong about this fight. Director Kim had insisted she stay closer to the arena than usual. The battle moved back and forth across the arena. Both teams were skilled, But Jaeho's team worked better together. They were winning. The crowd could sense it. Even Krevnar seemed frustrated. Then it happened. One of Jaeho's teammates fell, injured but not seriously. Hannah, following her duty as a medic, rushed forward to help. She had done this many times before. Krevnar saw an opportunity. He smiled cruelly. Instead of continuing his fight with Jaeho, he turned toward Hannah. The crowd gasped as they realized what he was about to do. "No," Jaeho shouted, but he was too far away. Krevnar struck Hannah with terrible force. She flew across the arena and hit the wall hard. The sound was horrible. The crowd went silent. Time seemed to stop for Jaeho. He saw Hannah lying there, not moving. He saw Krevnar laughing. He saw Director Kim watching from his booth with that cruel smile. Something changed in Jaeho at that moment. Suji, standing nearest to him, felt it first. The air around him seemed to grow heavier. His eyes changed. The calm, controlled fighter disappeared. In its place came something the aliens had only heard about in ancient human stories, something they had dismissed as myth: the berserker rage. Jaeho's roar echoed through the arena. It wasn't human. It was something older, something primal. Even Krevnar stopped laughing. "What is happening?" someone in the crowd asked. The aliens had never seen anything like this. Jaeho moved with impossible speed. His staff struck Krevnar with such force that the champion staggered backward. Again and again, Jaeho attacked. There was no technique now, no careful strategy. Just pure, unstoppable fury. Suji helped get Hannah to safety while Jaeho fought. The medical team worked quickly to save Hannah's life. But Jaeho didn't see any of this. He saw only Krevnar. For the first time in his life, Krevnar felt fear. He tried to defend himself, but Jaeho's attacks were too fast, too powerful. The human seemed to grow stronger with each passing moment. Director Kim stood up in his booth. This was not what he had planned. The human was supposed to break, to die, not become this unstoppable force. The fight ended when Krevnar fell to his knees, beaten but alive. Jaeho stood over him, still shaking with rage. The entire arena was silent. Later, when Hannah was stable and sleeping in the medical wing, Suji found Jaeho sitting quietly beside her bed. "Now they understand," Suji said softly, "why humans were feared in the old stories, why we never pushed them too far." Jaeho didn't respond. He just watched Hannah breathe, his eyes still holding a hint of that terrible rage. The aliens had wanted to see human weakness. Instead, they had awakened something that would change the arena forever. A week passed after the incident with Krevnar. Hannah recovered slowly in the medical wing, but something had changed permanently in Jaeho. The other fighters noticed it first. The calm, careful warrior was gone. In his place stood someone different. Director Kim called Jaeho to his office. The room was high above the arena, with large windows overlooking the training grounds. Kim sat behind his desk, trying to look confident, but his hands shook slightly. "Your next fight is tomorrow," Director Kim said. "The crowds are demanding to see you again. They want to see this change in you." Jaeho said nothing. He simply stared at Kim with those changed eyes. The silence made Kim uncomfortable. "The betting is higher than ever," Kim continued. "Everyone wants to know if what they saw was real, if a human could really be that powerful. Schedule whatever fights you want," Jaeho said quietly. His voice was different now too, colder. "But remember what happens when you go too far." In the training area, Suji watched Jaeho prepare for his next fight. His movements were different. Before, he had fought with careful technique. Now, each movement contained barely controlled power. The training dummies broke under his strikes. "You have embraced it," Suji said. "The rage, the thing humans call berserker blood." Jaeho paused his training. "Not embraced," he corrected. "Controlled. There's a difference." The next day's fight proved this. Ji-ho faced two massive fighters from the ice worlds. In the past, he would have used strategy and skill to defeat them slowly. Not anymore. The crowd watched in fascinated horror as Ji-ho moved with frightening speed. His staff became a blur. The ice warriors, known for their strength, could not touch him. Every strike he landed carried the power of his controlled fury. In the medical wing, Hannah watched on the screens. "He fights for us now," she said to the other injured fighters gathered around her. "For everyone who has been hurt in this place." The fight ended quickly. Both ice warriors lay defeated, but alive. Ji-ho had shown mercy, but everyone understood the message. He could have killed them easily. Director Kim watched from his booth, his face pale. The arena's other managers gathered around him, worried. The betting profits were huge, but they had created something they couldn't control. "He must be stopped," one manager said, "before others learn from him. Before they all learn to fight with such rage." Kim nodded slowly. "Contact our scientists," he ordered. "There must be a way to suppress this power, to return him to what he was." That evening, Sujita found Ji-ho sitting alone in the quiet training area. The arena's lights were dim, casting long shadows. "They fear you," she said. "All of them, even the other champions." "Good," Ji-ho replied. He looked at his hands. They wanted entertainment. They wanted to see human weakness. Instead, they awakened something they don't understand. Suji sat beside him. The old stories speak of human berserkers, warriors who could channel their rage into unstoppable power. The aliens thought they were just stories. "Stories exist for a reason," Ji-ho said. "Some truths are written in blood and bone, passed down through generations." They wanted to see humanity's limits. He stood up, his eyes glowing slightly in the dim light. "Now they will see that we have none." In his office, Director Kim made secret plans. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new attempts to break this human fighter. But deep down, he felt a growing fear. He had wanted to prove human weakness. Instead, he had revealed why the galaxy's oldest races had always feared pushing humanity too far. Director Kim sat in his private laboratory with the arena's chief scientist. On screens around them, videos showed Ji-ho's recent fights. The scientist pointed to data readings taken during these matches. "We have created something to stop him," the scientist said. "Neural suppressants. They will weaken his connection to this berserker rage the humans possess." Kim studied the blue liquid in a small vial. "And this will work. Our tests suggest it will. But we have never used it on a human before." In the medical wing, Hannah had finally recovered enough to work again. As she organized her supplies, she overheard two guards talking outside. Their words made her blood freeze. She found Suji immediately. "They planned to drug Ji-ho," Hannah said, "before his next fight. They want to suppress his abilities." Suji's black eyes narrowed. "When?" "Tomorrow. Krevnar has challenged him to a death match." The arena masters approved it. The news spread quickly through the arena. A death match between the undefeated human and the former champion. The betting reached new heights. Every seat in the arena sold out. Ji-ho prepared quietly in his room. Someone knocked on his door. It was Hannah and Suji. "The arena masters plan to cheat," Suji said. "They will give you drugs to weaken you." Ji-ho continued his preparations calmly. "I know," he said. "I can smell the fear in them when they watch me fight. They were bound to try something." "You cannot fight if they drug you," Hannah protested. "Krevnar will kill you." Ji-ho turned to them. His eyes held that controlled fire that hadn't left since his transformation. "They don't understand what they created," he said softly. "These suppressants, they target the mind's controls. But that's not where human rage comes from." The next morning, arena guards brought Ji-ho his pre-fight meal. He ate it without hesitation, knowing it contained the suppressants. The guards watched nervously. In the arena's preparation room, Director Kim spoke to Krevnar. "The human will be weakened. Do not fail this time." Krevinar growled. I will tear him apart slowly. The crowd will remember who their true champion is. The arena fell silent as Jeho entered. He moved differently, slower. The suppressants were working. The crowd murmured. Those who bet on him looked worried. Krevinar entered from the other side, roaring. The crowd cheered for their old champion. The human looks weak, someone in the crowd said. The stories were just stories after all. Director Kim watched from his booth, smiling. The neural suppressants were working perfectly, too perfectly. Jeho could barely hold his staff properly. Then Krevinar struck first blood, and everything changed. The scientists had made a terrible mistake. The suppressants didn't stop the berserker rage. They only removed Jeho's ability to control it. The change happened instantly. Jeho's roar shook the arena. His eyes blazed with uncontrolled fury. The crowd fell silent. In the medical wing, Hannah watched the screens. They didn't suppress his power, she whispered. They removed his restraint. Suji nodded grimly. Now they will see what happens when you take away a human's control. When you leave only the rage. Director Kim's smile disappeared as he watched Jeho transform into something that even his previous battles hadn't shown. The arena masters had made their final mistake. The true battle was about to begin. The arena fell silent as they watched Jeho transform. The neural suppressants had removed all his careful control, leaving only pure rage. His eyes glowed with an intensity that made even the bravest fighters step back from the arena's edge. Krevinar realized his mistake too late. He had wanted a weakened opponent. Instead, he faced something from humanity's darkest legends, an uncontrolled berserker. Jeho moved with impossible speed. The staff in his hands became a blur. Each strike carried the force of his unleashed fury. Krevinar tried to defend himself, but Jeho's attacks came from everywhere at once. Director Kim stood in his booth, his face white with fear. Stop the fight, he ordered, but none of the arena controls responded. Sujai had sabotaged them earlier, making sure no one could interfere. The crowd watched in stunned silence as Jeho drove Krevinar back step by step. The champion's famous strength meant nothing against this unleashed storm of violence. Blood dripped from dozens of wounds where Jeho's staff had found gaps in Krevinar's natural armor. In the medical wing, Hannah prepared for the aftermath. This is what they wanted, she said to the other medical staff. They wanted to see humanity's limits. Now they will see that we have none. Krevinar tried one last desperate attack. He threw away his weapons and charged forward, trying to use his massive size to crush Jeho. But Jeho didn't move. Instead, he met the charge head-on. The sound of their collision echoed through the arena. When the dust cleared, Jeho stood over Krevinar. The champion lay broken on the ground, defeated but alive. Jeho turned to face Director Kim's booth. His voice carried clearly through the silent arena. The fight is over. Now we talk about freedom. The arena masters had no choice. Jeho's display of power had changed everything. He demanded freedom not just for himself, but for all fighters who wanted to leave. No one dared to refuse him. Later that day, as ships prepared to take the freed fighters home, Hannah found Jeho in the medical wing. The suppressants had worn off, and his careful control had returned. Was it hard? She asked, stopping yourself from killing him. Jeho looked at his hands. The rage wanted his death, but that would have made us like them. Sometimes the greatest strength is in showing mercy. Suji joined them, carrying travel packs. The ships are ready. Many fighters have chosen to leave. Some want to stay. The arena will continue, but with new rules. No more death matches. No more slavery. Director Kim watched from his office as the ships departed. His perfect arena had changed forever. The aliens had learned an important lesson. Never mistake human kindness for weakness. Never push them past their limits. On the transport ship heading to Earth, Hannah sat next to Jeho. What will you do now? She asked. Jeho looked out at the stars. There are other arenas out there, other places where the strong abuse the weak. Perhaps they too need to learn about human rage. The story of the human berserker spread throughout the galaxy. Aliens told their children to be careful around humans, not because humans were weak, but because inside each one slept a power that could shake worlds. And somewhere out there, a former arena fighter named Park Ji-ho continued his journey, teaching the galaxy that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their rage, but in their choice to control it. The end.